that confidence to be able to say, yes, I love taking space and I'm going to take it even more. We can all shine, right? And me shining doesn't mean you cannot shine as well. We can all shine together.
Welcome to The Career Flipper, a weekly podcast featuring career change stories from people all around the world in all kinds of industries. We talk about how they get from point A to point B and all the twists and turns in between. I'm your host and fellow career flipper, Jenny Dempsey. After many years working in customer service and experience leadership in the tech startup world, I got laid off and stumbled into furniture flipping, taking pieces headed for the trash and giving them a second chance. If you're into that sort of thing, follow me over on Instagram and TikTok, San Diego Furniture Flipper. I started this podcast, though, because I felt really weird and honestly really alone when I switched from tech into furniture restoration. But as I've been flipping my own career, I've discovered that I'm not the only one making big changes. So I figured, why not talk to others and share their stories? We all can learn a lot from one another. So I hope these episodes give you a little actionable boost of inspiration for your own career path. All right, question for you. What if you had a successful six-figure career, but still didn't feel fulfilled? That's exactly what Marina Movsissian from Paris, France experienced. And in this episode, you'll hear her journey from a thriving marketing and sales career, including time with Google in Dublin and San Francisco, to starting her own coaching business, EmpowerMov. While juggling her full-time job, Marina began helping women in leadership through workshops, one-on-one coaching, and speaking events, work that she now does full-time. Beyond her career flip, Marina reveals how dance has been a transformative part of her story, helping her build the creativity and confidence she brings to work and life. Her story reminds us that even when a career seems picture perfect, it's okay to seek something deeper. Sometimes your next chapter is quietly waiting for you. You just need the courage to say yes. Let's get into the episode now.
Hi, Jenny. I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, doing so good. Thank you so much for being here with us on the Career Flipper. We've known each other we met recently through this, it's kind of like a global women's business community. And the level of support in that community is it's amazing. And I loved hearing about your story, your journey of how you kind of navigated the flips in your life. So I was like, I got to have you on. So tell everyone a little bit about you, where you are in the world, and just what you're doing now. And then we'll dive into the flips.
All right. So, hi, everyone. My name is Marina Movsissian. So, I'm originally Russian Armenian, but I grew up in Paris, and that's where I live again now. Currently, I'm a certified professional coach and I work with women mostly to help them develop their leadership, their confidence, and navigate their careers. But I also work with companies to make sure that they have a greater diversity in terms of gender and that any woman there can thrive to the best of their abilities and ambitions.
That's amazing work. That is necessary work. And to hear how you found your way into that is going to be really exciting. So let's just dive into it. Marina, tell about how you got to this place, how you flipped there, slipped there, glided there, all the things. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so, when I was thinking about our topic of today, career flips, I actually realized I had many mini flips prior to the bigger one. So that was kind of interesting to think about. My background is that I had spent 13 years in marketing and sales. So I graduated from marketing and I was working at the same time, in France. And I believe you have something similar. We have those sandwich courses when you work and you study in that, same area.
Right.
So I've done that for 5 years in the marketing field. But then when I had my first job, I kind of moved to the sales role, like straight out of school, basically. Mm-hmm. So I started doing a sales role and I felt like my ambitions and where I wanted to go with my career with the background I had in terms of schools in France was not going to help me get where I wanted to go. So I started looking at jobs in London originally. And while looking to it, so I just, I resigned from my position, not knowing where I will go next. But I was 25 years old and I was thinking, if anything, I will always find something else. It's going to be okay. And even like that, half of people took me like a crazy person and they said you should probably not do that, but that was kind of the best first decision ever, since I ended up landing in Google, working for Google in Dublin, Ireland. So I started there in 2015, originally for a 7 month contract, just replacing for maternity leave. So it was a maternity cover. And it went so well that I ended up interviewing for a full-time role that opened and staying in Ireland for 3 years. Then, I had a new ambition. I wanted to make my way to San Francisco, which was even further from home, right? Like from Paris, it's a really big distance.
Yeah.
You see that pretty well. And I ended up, after a year working on building my network, since I had really nothing there, right? Like no one knew me, even if it was for an internal move, it was a really challenging move to make. So I worked over it for a period of a year. I also had a few coaching sessions to help me prepare for my transition. That's where I discovered coaching in my life. And so basically, April 2018, I went to this workshop. I like to mention it because it will make sense later. And it was a workshop around how to self promote at work. Understanding that women were less engaging in self promotion at work since we just didn't have those tools, right? So it was less frequent for women to do that. So I went to that workshop. I loved the workshop. It helped me understand a few things. I had a few coaching hours sessions. And then May 2018, I went to San Francisco for 10 days to pitch myself to managers. And that's how I landed my next role. 3 months later, I moved to San Francisco to start a new role in a global team there, still being a salesperson, basically, for really big accounts in tech B2B. And as soon as I was a bit more settled, I got trained to become a facilitator for the workshops that I mentioned. So I started in 2019 facilitating workshops beside my core job as a salesperson. I feel like it helped me see that I actually really enjoy talking to large audiences, facilitate content, like animate groups. And basically, the public speaking people hate, I love it, even if it's always stressful, right? So I started facilitating those workshops 2019. I met many women through these workshops who shared the same patterns as I saw in me, like kind of having a lot of talent, working super hard, thinking that our work is going to get the credit it deserves just by itself. But this never actually really happens, right?
Yeah.
So that planted a seed in my head. That summer 2019, I had the luck of having a really bad manager. She made me think about what kind of manager do I want to be? What kind of leadership do I want to embody myself? And alongside, I was also having this bigger reflection where I kind of hit a wall. I felt, like I was happy to work there. I was happy to have this life in California. It was really different from everything I knew. And I was growing so much. But I realized that from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., I wasn't happy. I felt empty. I felt like I really missed some sense of fulfillment. So, I started having these thoughts. And thanks to that bad manager, I decided I was going to get trained as a coach in order to maybe have a hat of kind of a manager coach position. When I was going to get a team, I was thinking I was going to be the best manager for them. I was really dreaming about helping individuals from my team to help them develop to the best selves that they could be in the directions that they wanted, basically everything that my manager was not. So 2020, I'm starting that training to become a certified professional coach. And when you go to train for coaching, you get coached yourself a lot, right?
Right.
So I was coached for 6 months, and that led me to really transform who I was as a person. I talk about my personal revolution, which happened in 2020 in San Francisco. And so that made me fall completely in love with coaching. And then I thought, why would I just kind of work so hard in order to get that managing position that I want to be in people development, and just work to develop this small amount of people in my team, those few people in my team, while I could actually bring the power of coaching to so many more women in the world and choose who I want to work with. I must admit, I left Google. I was thinking, okay, that sounds like a bit of a risky plan, right? I had a 6-figure income in San Francisco, California. I was pretty aware this was probably not going to happen anytime soon again. So I moved back to France, Paris, first taking a role, so keeping a business developer hat, but in the coaching field in France. So I could put a foot back in France first, but also in coaching in France. And I thought, I was going to work there and then maybe ask for a part time role and then at some point move on to my next career. But it totally didn't go as planned, right? Plans are made to also not work out sometimes. But it's still nice to plan. I still believe it. So I ended up just staying 7 months in that company. I actually had an experience of, I got pregnant, but this was an accident. And I had a miscarriage. And so October 2021, when all that happened, that was kind of a weird gift in disguise, which made me think about where am I currently with my life and what do I really want. That made me realize that, I was not in a situation where I could have the family that I do want to create at that time. But I realized that I had a really deep desire that, was dear to my heart. And that was that project of launching my coaching company. So I went back to the startup. I asked them to cut my contract off. So I had just 6 months unemployment help from the government. That's it. That was it. Obviously, I had some savings. You should always make sure you have an emergency plan and save for a few months. And then I just went full on. January 2022, I started full time building my coaching company. I was trained as a coach, but I wasn't trained as an entrepreneur. So that opened a whole lot of new challenges. But I'm pretty happy that I took that decision.
Wow. What a journey. All of the ups and downs. And I have so many questions for you, Marina, along the way. First of all, thank you for sharing all of that in such detail and such honesty and transparency. And the things that really stood out for me is, you had this open mind where you're like, I'm going to take these roles, I'm going to move to different places. and you clearly succeeded at those, and you had this job stability. And I mean, you mentioned in San Francisco, you had this, 6-figure role because you need that in California. And, but you felt in the 9 to 5 so empty. And everything else outside that you were learning and growing, and then you'd go to work and you would feel this. And the thing that really stood out is you didn't necessarily take that leap immediately. You were able to kind of find the things on the side. So you started to kind of do that research and that learning and training for coaching on the side. And I think that's so important to mention, because a lot of people think, well, I can't leave my full-time job. I can't do the things that I love. Well, what if there's time to do them on the side? And, or what if we make the time, even though it feels so overwhelming? What if we reevaluate a little bit and make time for them? And the fact that coaching came to you from such a personal place too, you were coached, and then you're like, oh, I want to do this for more, and not just my team, like on a bigger scale. And I just think all of these together, it's really inspiring to hear that you don't necessarily have to take the huge leap immediately. There could be the calculated risks that you do later on, but you can kind of dip your toes into it. And I was wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that experience of like juggling a full-time job and, taking the training on the side, doing some of the coaching on the side, and how that, what was that like for you in the day to day? How did you manage your time? How did you kind of do all the things and still have time to, eat or exercise or, like have fun? Like, because I think a lot of people get caught up in like, I'm so busy at work. How do I even make time for these other things,
Yeah, those are really great questions. So I hope I do the best to answer everything. I want to mention first that when I went into that coaching training, I had no idea I was going to do a career flip yet, right? So I went into it with a totally different project originally, and I do believe that having mini experiments of trying kind of ourselves in other shoes and see how we feel, right? Like I got into facilitation work prior to even going to coaching, right? So without knowing it, I started building my career for 2022 in 2019, if that makes any sense. To go back to your question now, when I went for the coaching course, I must say that I was kind of lucky because COVID hit at that time. I started my coaching training. We had the first weekend, we had 3 days module in person in San Francisco. And right after that module, the world went on lockdown. So suddenly, I was going to work from home full time, no time to go, like you don't have any time to take the transportation to go to work, no commute time anymore, right? So that was taking some time off. And I found a way to manage my days with, when you wake up, you do some of your workout if you need to get you in good joys for the rest of the day. I know Californians like that very much. And then I was working as efficiently as I could to make my job happy, if that made any sense. I do have a profound sense of professionalism. So it was really important to me to still be really good on my job, even though I didn't take any happiness out of it or fulfillment out of it. I felt, that it was important for me to still serve my clients to the best of my abilities, especially at that time of real time across the world.
Yeah.
Also, I was really far from all of my family and friends from Paris, right? For an unknown period of time at that time. So I think it kind of, in a way, in a weird way, made me help to focus even more on what I was trying to achieve, which was my coaching certification. So I maximized my lunch breaks. And then, because I was efficient at work, and even before that, I must mention, prior to being an entrepreneur at least, I always made an effort to have a good work life balance. So I wouldn't be someone originally who was working late hours, working weekends. I would just strictly do kind of my time, but I will do it really well. But then when time is out of the office, I'm out of the office. I had my dance classes, my friends, blah, blah, blah. So during COVID, those social times were cut, the dance classes were cut. So I had that extra time to study as well. That helped me to manage my coaching certification alongside my full-time role. And so it took me, like about 9 months, but I ended up having everything delivered on time. I was studying on a good rhythm. So my pace was, working out pretty well. And by the end of that year, I got my certification. And then the world kind of slightly started also to awaken again.
The timing right there and the ability to have the extra time to focus on, okay, or really to be intentional. It sounds like you're really intentional about what was going to help you do your best work for the company. And I love that you mentioned this too. Like, even though you're not happy at the company, the level of professionalism at the end of it, it's still a job, it's still a business. And I think that's very important to call out that, like, bad managers aside, like,
Yeah.
we still have a responsibility, and the level of professionalism is important to do, and to follow through on. And then still making time for friends and dance. I mean, can we talk about dance as well? Like, the shows, and you make time for this, and you're clearly incredibly talented. Can you talk a little bit about how dance has kind of woven itself through your career path as well?
Yeah, yeah. That's a good question, actually. I'm not sure I even thought about it too much before, but I started dancing, I was 20 years old, and I had no self confidence whatsoever. I was raised in a family where my dad is pretty strict. And, like he was telling me sometimes things like, "Oh, you want a dessert after dinner? Look at yourself in the mirror and let me know if you still want dessert," right? So it was pretty hard as a child
Yeah.
to build my self esteem or self confidence. So it didn't happen much. And then at 20 years old, first, I have to mention also, I started to be in a romantic relationship where I started to feel like, oh, I could actually get love from outside of people who are in my family or my friends, but I can experience also true love. So that was one thing. And dancing happened at that time as well. I went to that dance class. The dance class was a beginner dance class, but it was so hard. I thought, okay, I want to make it work. And I went again and again and again. And the first year, I was kind of at the really back of the room. You wouldn't notice me much. The second year, maybe I was still a bit there, but I started slowly getting a bit more okay with the idea of being noticed and taking space. The third year, I took on another additional class. By the fourth year, I was doing all of the dance classes of my teacher in that week. So that meant 7 hours of dancing per week without the time when we had to rehearse for the shows at the end of the year. So it's true that I pretty early on had a relationship with work where work was just work. It's supposed to be what it is, And so after work, I had my dance engagements, I had my friends, or time to myself, right? So it was always important for my well being to have that. Moving to Dublin, it started to be a bit more difficult because it took me some time to find a dance community again. I kind of found one, but it was a bit far from my house to go too often. So I had it a bit, and I noticed that over the years, it happened pretty often that I met really good friendships and friendships that I still have to this day through my dance classes. So it's a really important part of my identity. And then moving to San Francisco, the funny thing is, day 4 in the city, I went to a dance class and it was a dancehall dance class. And prior to that, I was doing more like street jazz or commercial hip hop, but I never tried dancehall before as properly as it was. And on that class, I fall in love with dancehall as well. I noticed that dance was kind of making my heart really full and joyful. So that also became one of the big pillars in my life as an expatriate in San Francisco, is that I was going to dance classes every week, sometimes twice a week. And I met this amazing teacher. We're still friends, even though she lives in San Francisco and I'm back to Paris. But she meant so much for me, and her class was nearly a place of healing, of therapy. I loved to say that dance is kind of a therapy, and so obviously moving back to Paris, I went back to my original dance community. So every year I still go on stage and I love performing. The difference is that by now I'm 34 and I know that I am passionate of dancing and that I love being on a stage. And I have built, thanks to the coaching training, actually, that confidence to be able to say, yes, I love taking space and I'm going to take it even more. We can all shine, right? And me shining doesn't mean you cannot shine as well. We can all shine together.
Just the power of dance and how it found its way into your life and was a part. It's almost like that golden thread that kind of lifted you up in times where you weren't sure. And it kind of continued to show you that, like, the more you do it, the more you will achieve and the better you'll feel. And then how that parallels with the coaching and how it's helped heal you as well as others. And that's beautiful. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it helps my current job too, right? Because thanks to dance and going on stage, you're practicing that idea of taking space, right? And so for someone who's now doing conferences and public speaking a lot, it was definitely useful as well.
Yeah, I can absolutely see how that is so incredibly helpful and supportive. And you are able to show up and stand on the stage and own this space, take it up. Not, I think a lot of women, and I will say men too, sometimes feel this way of being too much, too loud, too out there, or they're posting too much on social media, or they're doing this and that. And it's like, well, there is always space for us to be doing the things. And how you mentioned how you were raised and kind of told to like shrink. I come from a similar background where all the women in my family were always on diets, and eating dessert or just showing up and looking a certain way was completely inappropriate and, dare I say, disgusting. Like, there was just a lot of things around that. So I was just always told, like, don't be too much, don't be too big, shrink. Be the one in the corner. And that, how we show up at work, how we don't let our voice be heard because we think we just have to follow this path. And hearing you talk about that and the work that you do in coaching to bring that out, and you setting the example of doing it yourself, like your entire journey shows how equipped you are as a coach because you've done the work and you're continuing to do the work. So can you talk a little bit about the coaching that you do and share kind of how does that work in, day to day? How are you helping people?
Yeah. So first, and I love sharing your story, Jenny. I feel like we are putting too much shame on women, and this has to stop. And so that's why really early on, before I even got certified in coaching, I knew I wanted to be working with women. I'm pretty tired of the way everyone always thinks it's okay to tell a woman how they should be living their lives. And I do not accept that. So, my work as a coach now is that I consider myself as my first client in a way. So as you said, I really feel like it's a priority for me to self-develop because while I'm working on me, it's somehow a way to help anyone else working with me as well, even when we do not even work together, because I just embody so much the things that I'm trying to also share with my clients. So there are different ways. I work with private clients in a way. So some people contact me. For example, I'm going to have a new, actually American client. Meaning she's based in America, but she's originally from Brazil. I noticed that I have a lot of multinational people working with me, probably because I am multinational myself. But last year, I kind of had like 4 French expatriates in Germany who all worked with me. I think they all just shared my numbers. So that was really funny. And so, this new person I was going to mention, she came on my way. She is at this stage in her life where she understands that she's not taking happiness out of her role as I was in her spot 4 years ago, right? And she just wants a change, but she doesn't know what type of change. Maybe she even wants to move to a new place, right? Like that's sometimes I have people who really are ready to kind of challenge everything. They are just kind of lost, right? They need to find support to help them take some steps back and understand where they are now and where they want to go next. If you do not have a clear view on where you are now, you can ask to Google Maps like the closest pizzeria. If it doesn't know where you are, it cannot bring you there. It won't help you find that proper itinerary. So you need to first figure out where you are, and that's what we are going to be doing together when we start working. Is to help her find what's important for her, what she values in life, what are her talents, when does she feel like she has true meaning in her life, to try to bring that to maybe other areas in her life where meaning is less present currently, right? So that's one thing. Sometimes, so I have a lot of people who are actually career flippers who want to make a career switch, but they're not sure in which direction. For example, I had a woman, she was pretty sure she wanted to become a coach herself as well, a certified professional coach. So she reached out to me to help her in that transition originally. But within 3 coaching sessions, I helped her understand that actually what her heart really desired was to become a home designer. So that was not even like originally the question, right? She didn't came for that, but that's what she took away from the coaching, right? So in coaching, it's always my client who drives, right, the conversation. If you come to a coaching session, Jenny, you will tell me what you want to work on. I'm a certified professional coach. I am not going to be the one deciding for you, but I have the tools, I have some intuition and pretty good listening skills to help you find your own answers. And so that's what I'm doing with these people I work with. And I had a lot of experiences with people who wanted to change careers. So that's a topic that I'm noticing is really huge since COVID, I believe, made it even bigger.
Yeah. And what you just said, like the questions that you're asking to help people figure it out for themselves, like we already have the answers in. It's just sometimes we don't know. Like, I first of all, I also love the example of the Google Maps. Like, if you don't know where you are, you kind of don't know how to get to that next spot.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you feel so lost, it's like, I mean, when I got laid off, I had no clue. I was like, I don't even know where I am. I don't know what I'm doing. And I had zero clue that furniture flipping and hosting a podcast was anything on my to-do list. I had no clue. But once I started to kind of chip away at like, well, this is where I'm at, and working with coaches, therapists, reading books, just like sobbing to friends, like whatever it was, getting this, working through this stuff, not realizing that I was really actually creating the foundation for the path in a direction that I, wasn't sure that I was going to be going, but I was already creating that. And so to hear how you're doing that work, like the woman that you mentioned who thought she wanted to be a coach, but she really wanted to be, a home designer. Like, no, she probably, maybe she knew that, maybe, deep down there, it was there, but she was afraid because that is a lot of
That's exactly what it was.
Right. Yeah. And I think, I don't know if you get this question a lot, but now that I've started the podcast, I receive messages from people who listen in, and they will say like, I wish I can find my thing. I wish that I could find my, some people call it a calling. Some people call it a passion. Some people, whatever it's called. Everyone defines that differently, but like, I wish I could find it. And I laugh and I'm like, well, I didn't realize that I found mine literally in the trash. Like, I mean, picking up furniture left on the curb. People are throwing away good pieces of furniture. And that is where I found this path. I never saw that coming. And I think sometimes to have the patience and trust in our journeys, that if we have that initial feeling of, I want to do something different.
Yeah.
Then just kind of like the patience and the trust to see how it unravels, and looking at the breadcrumbs along the way, like, with you in dance or the coaching, and how you took that on as a very personal project. And now you're doing it to help others. I think when we stop, and this is just me speaking from experience, I'm not an expert, I'm not a certified coach, just from my experience, but sharing that with you, like, do you hear that a lot of like, I'm looking for this thing. I want to find my thing, but I don't know what it is. And then if we just kind of like sit back a bit, sometimes we find it and it's right under our noses.
Yeah. Yeah, I love everything that you're sharing, and your experience, even if you're not a coach, we don't care, is so valuable, Jenny. It's thank you for sharing it. I feel there is a lot of value here for people. And it reminds me of actually like kind of the big sentence my coaching school always says: trust the process. Sometimes it's just about planting a seed, like an intention that I know I want a change. I know I need a change. I am not sure of what the change is going to be yet. Yes, it takes some patience, sometimes or some efforts to, try to discover more about yourself, do some introspection work. Actually, a lot of people, they start their career thinking that they should be doing that kind of work because maybe someone told them that's a good work to be doing, because maybe of family pressure, education, environment. And so I'm seeing that a lot. People who kind of just start somewhere, and maybe starting around like 30 years old, sometimes before, sometimes later, they are realizing that maybe another life is possible for them, a life where they could be more fulfilled. They just do not know how to figure that out, which is normal. They never questioned that before. So let's also be patient with ourselves and be kind of like self-compassionate, if I may say, or have a lot of kindness towards ourselves, to think like, okay, if I'm having this feeling, it's probably important enough to give it some intention and attention and intention again. intention being so important. And so while we give some intention to that, sometimes for some people it's getting pretty clear pretty fast, and that's great for them. And some people indeed kind of put a lot of pressure of like, what is my calling? What am I supposed to be doing with my life? I am not fully sure. Everyone needs to have just one. Maybe you will, have a job for the next 10 years and you will be super happy about it. And maybe one day you'll wake up and you'll be like, okay, I'm kind of done being a therapist. Now I want to, send flowers to people, like sell flowers. Life is so full of surprises and changes, and we are, as human beings, we are changing and evolving. I cannot promise to you that in 30 years old I will still be doing the job I am doing now. I know I love it so much, but who knows what happens in life, right? So that can be one thing. And then sometimes people do not find fulfillment at work, and it is okay. For some people, work is just a work, and they're happy to be doing whatever type of work they are doing. And maybe to them, finding happiness and fulfillment will come from having a family, will come from, going and be a volunteer somewhere, have some voluntary work, or being involved in a community. There are so many ways in finding how we enjoy spending our life, right? I think the true thing is listen to our own self. Our heart is a GPS, even better, right? And listen to other people is not always the best option. But when we are lost, it's always also good to find ways to get out of our own heads. Sometimes we're spinning around and it's getting out to get out of there. So I believe working with a coach is always a good idea.
This resonates so much of like, work doesn't have to be where we find our joy. Work,
yeah,
it's totally okay to show up at work, do a great job, respect our teammates, and close the computer at the end of the day and know it's just a paycheck. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think there's a lot of push, and I don't know if this is just in America or if this is everywhere, but to love everything you do, to love your work, and to work is your passion. And, I see this a lot on LinkedIn, and, to each their own. Like it's great. And I have been in that boat where I thought, I love everything about this. But I'm like, you know what? At some points, it really was just a paycheck. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's totally fine, because the things outside of it, like you mentioned with dance, or, your friends, or I do a lot of hot yoga. I love my furniture flipping. I love hanging out with my dog and my friends. I love spending, time with my boyfriend and going to concerts. Like there's so many things outside of it that bring us joy, and that's perfectly acceptable as well. And we don't always have to flip. We don't always have to think there's just one thing. We can do many, many things, and it can be more than work, because we are more than just our work.
Yeah, that shouldn't become another injunction, that shouldn't just be another something we have to do. And sometimes it's about periods, right? Like maybe you're in your period where you just like to enjoy life, your friends, your boyfriend, whoever, your dog, and maybe you're in that time where you do not want to prioritize your work happiness. And that's okay. And maybe in a year or two, you will be in a different spot in your life, and you will be like, okay, now I want to change something around my work, or not. And it's okay. Nobody has to be super happy at work, be so fulfilled, having found her one true calling. Like, let's also, enjoy life and not be so hard with ourselves.
Right. Yes. It really does come down to, let's enjoy the time that we have, and let's show up as our best selves, learn from our mistakes, support one another. Just fun. Fun.
Dance.
Yeah, dance. I can't dance. I'm going to leave the dancing to you. No one wants to see me dance. I will put that out there. But I'll sing. You can dance. Then we'll do that.
Yeah.
Oh, Marina, this was such an incredible conversation. I want people to connect with you and really understand more about the services that you offer and just you as a wonderful human. Before I give you that space, I want to share one little dream that I have thought about, and I'd love to put this on our goal list, whether it's next year or the year after. But I would love if at some point in the future we meet in Paris and we have a dessert together. It'd be so
Let
fun.
me know when you come.
Done. Now, how can people connect with you? Where can they find you and learn more about you and the coaching that you offer?
Yeah. So there are two ways. The first one is my website. You can go on en, like for English, dot empower, EmpowerMov, EmpowerMov.com. And then you'll find so many information. And also, there is another place where I'm super active. I love hearing what people have to post, mostly reading, I would say, and also post myself around leadership, career, so many things, entrepreneurship. It's on LinkedIn. So to find me on LinkedIn, you put Marina Movsissian. It's Movsissian. That's how I notice who my friends are. If you know how to spell my name, we're on a good spot. So Marina Movsissian, and I'm always happy to connect on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much for making the time. I appreciate you. What a gift. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Career Flipper. Be sure to connect with Marina using the links in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend. Make sure to subscribe for more flippin' episodes like Marina's every week. And if you get a chance, leave a review. It really helps the show reach more career flippers around the world. If you have a career flip story of your own and you'd like to share it on a future episode, tell me about it. Send me an email to hello@thecareerflipper.com. You know, what I love most about this podcast is the chance that these stories might be the spark that someone needs to break free from feeling stuck and finally take that first step toward their dreams. I know that first step is tough, but it's so worth it. And whether it helps you grow or opens doors to something you've never imagined, it's a step that can change everything. So keep on your path, my friend. What's the best that could happen?